Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist Steve Schutz, and I'm here, as always, trauma surgeon Stephan Moran, automotive consultant, expert, and collector Adams Hudson. Hey, guys.
Hey, Steve-O.
How's it going, dude? You in Sun Valley? It looks like a little snow up there.
Yeah, I skied today. It was great. It was really nice snow. I had a good time. We got a lot to cover today, but it's really good. We are going to talk about small pickups, and this was inspired by a Toyota that was launched recently that I'm very excited about. I'm more excited than Stephan, and we'll talk about why in a second. Car spotting, Adams is going to talk about a Lincoln that's interesting. How many Lincolns are interesting now? I'll go with 0. And then trauma surgeon safety, of course. We are the only podcast that has a trauma surgeon, car enthusiast, Dr. Stephan Moran, talking about safety. And this is where we can give you information that you're not going to get anywhere else. So Stephan's so great about that. And we're going to talk about TV cars, TV show cars that we like. And Adams has one he hates.
I've got one I hate too. I bet it's the same one.
It might be.
It might be because I didn't look through the pictures yet, so it is going to be a little surprise.
I have a backup hate car in case we take the same one.
All right.
So we should have time for $200,000 collector cars. So that'll wrap it up. But let me start with pickups. I have been watching, as you guys know, and as the audience knows, I've been watching my office. One of my offices sits over and looks down on a Ford dealership, and they had nothing 2 years ago. And then they started to get a trickle of F-150s and blah, 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 blah. Now they have everything except Mavericks and Rangers. Small pickups are more, they're loaded with F-Series. And I went to a Dodge dealer recently, tons of Ram pickups, but small pickups are, I think, the next step. Adams, you've talked about how these trucks, the full-size trucks, are too big, they're wasteful, that kind of stuff. I agree. And wouldn't it be nice if there were small pickups? So the reason I thought of this was that Toyota said in Asia, we're going to introduce this thing called the IMV0. Stephan has a picture. It's rear-wheel drive, 5-speed, has a little engine, a 4-cylinder. You can get all-wheel drive and you can get diesel if you want it. But this is stripped. No radio, no screens, no tack, no air conditioner. This
no airbags.
Well, we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
But honestly, let's go back to, if you want to get a Maverick, you can't go to the dealer and get one. These smaller pickups, I think, is what people want.
Well, they make so much more sense because people love the utility of trucks, and so I'm not like super down on trucks as a means of conveyance, plus your weekender, plus maybe your towing, or you go pick up plants at your favorite nursery. But the thing I'm against is the 6,000 to 8,000 pound behemoths that have to park diagonal across a parking space, and they had the turning radius of a river barge, and they're just pointless to have anything that big. If Toyota came out with something like this for the U.S. with a little bit more equipment, I don't think the U.S. is really ready for no airbags, no air conditioning, no radio, no whatever else. But honestly, a little $20,000, $20,000 to $30,000, I don't know what it would be, truck would be just unbelievable. And Steve, I think what you're seeing is that trend is that, it's funny how markets and production are always elastic. So Ford is responding to the incredible demand of the F-150, as is Dodge with the big Ram and GM and Chevrolet with their big trucks. And so they respond to the demand and the back orders, so they ramp up production. Well, by the time production hits, the target has moved as far as what the buyer affinity is, which I do believe you. It's for the smaller mid-sized trucks. And so now they've got this glut of big fat vehicles. And I hope that trend of too much is over.
I agree. Andrew Clark, who's been on this show, he's got a order in on a Ranger Raptor, and I eventually am going to replace my truck. And I'm seriously looking at the Ranger Raptor. I love the F-150, but I don't tow like I used to, and it makes more sense. And I think they're also getting new people into pickup trucks with the smaller ones that they wouldn't have. Clearly because the F-150 sales are still up, so they're not cannibalizing the F-150s. I think they're gaining market share with people that are coming out of that would have either bought an SUV or say, well, hey, I just get that smaller pickup truck, and it'll be even better than an SUV. It'll be more utilitarian and actually could serve some function better on a weekend towing or hauling stuff around. So I think, yeah, there's clear market. It would be interesting to see. Well, remember, like the days was it the Isuzu Pup?
Oh yeah.
Was a tiny little pickup truck that came to America, and then we had the Subaru Brat, kind of that in between, I don't know, truck SUV backward seats thing. But I think clearly these are purely utility vehicles, and it's at a price point where you could buy this and park it and only use it when you really need it. You didn't spend that much money on it. You got a truck when you want, and it's all the truck you'd need. But for the U.S. market, they'd have to. The question, could it pass our federal motor vehicle safety standards? Different countries have different rules for trucks versus passenger vehicles. So this vehicle doesn't probably fall under the normal Euro cap or I forgot what the Japanese testing program is called.
I'm going to say that Malaysia and Indonesia don't have many rules.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what this is. You're right. That's where this is geared for. Africa, Malaysia, Indonesia, developing countries. But you're right. I think a version of this, I like pieces on that giant plastic front end. It would, I think, there'd be a real market for it.
Yeah, this is on the Hilux platform. Hilux, I've said before, they sell Hiluxes all over the world. It's very, very bare bones. I think it's hilarious that it's called Hilux. I mean, it's like the opposite. It's low lux, but
yeah. They've had that platform for a while. They don't wear out platforms too quickly. I mean, you look at the Tacoma and you look at the Hilux, just been around since the dawn of time, but they still sell them.
Yeah, I think more Mavericks, and I think the GM ought to come out with a small Maverick type truck. I think it would, smaller than the Colorado and Canyon. I think it would sell well. So, all right, car spotting, and this is, Adams, you talked about this, and I go ahead and introduce it. But this is a car I think is so cool.
This is kind of a cool car, and it was an interesting pick. Wow, there's the best of them. But it was a Lincoln Mark Vll LSC, and we think about Lincoln right now, and it's too bad that Lincoln right now, you just don't really think about them having a sporty coupe. But back then, they were trying to compete with BMW and Mercedes, and I got to give credit to Steve for even feeling like this was a good car spotting car, because it had I blanked out, when this car was current. I wasn't really up on it. But Steve does a very good job. Obviously, as a gastroenterologist, he's looking at maybe small things that have a big impact on the big picture health. And this was kind of a small bit of a market that, as a journalist and him seeing a big picture, had sort of a big picture implication, because this is Lincoln going head to head with the BMW 6 Series, the Mercedes at that time 500 or 560 SEC, to have a big, powerful, handsome, road-devouring coupe. And when this car first came out, now this is stuff I did not know, when it first came out in 84, and they lasted to about 92, and they sold the fire out of them, but the LSC was the most dressed up performance version, and they sold way, way fewer of this particular model. But when it first came out, they had a BMW inline 6 turbo diesel, which had a whole 115 horsepower or something, and nobody bought them. But alongside that, they had the smaller Windsor V8, and it had something anemic like 140 horsepower. But this particular car, which I think is so cool, and they called it the Midnight Mark. I mean, even that alone just has an allure. 225 horsepower, sitting on a Mustang Fox platform, air ride suspension, the first in an American car. Those are composite headlights. If you look, they're not the dumb old rectangular or round ones that America had forever. That's the first composite lights ever offered on a U.S. car. First four-pot ABS. They beat the Corvette to market by about half a year. And so this was a car that was like pushing the line. I think those are 16, maybe they're 15. I'm going to say they're 16-inch BBS wheels, real life BBS, not copy
Wow.
BBS. Had leather bucket seats, not the velour, stupid, big bench like you're thinking of a Lincoln. This was a very solid performer. 225 horsepower at the end of its run, a 0 to 60 time in the The 8-ish second, which sounds laughable today, but I'm telling you, you'd still leave 2 black marks leaving wherever you wanted to with this car because the torque developed down low. 14.6 to in the quarter mile at maybe 103, 105 miles an hour. That was enough in the day. And I feel like this is an under-noticed, underappreciated U.S. car that was doing a pretty good job on the world stage.
I agree. I mean, I think it looks cool. The only thing that still bugged me about this car, I'm going to bring up the other picture about this Lincoln was
I bet I know what you're going to say. Rear end.
The baby's back, man. Look at this. It had the fake bump. But I mean, I know it's paying homage to the design of the original Lincolns where they had the spare tire in the back. But I think if you could change the trunk out of that car, it would be so much more appreciated. Because that's a faux bump. It doesn't do anything other than, pay a little history. But the car otherwise looks very cool. Much better than the T-Bird of that era.
Yep.
And all the styling things on this car, the driving lights, the BBS wheels, the dark color goes well with it. So I do like it a lot. I think it's a very cool car. And I don't know if I ever actually saw this edition of this car anywhere. The black edition. I remember all the others because they were actually, this was a very popular car at the time. There were a lot of them on the road. But I don't remember ever seeing the black version of this with the BBS wheels.
But you're right, Steph. I agree with you on that detail call. Just shave off the implied whatever it's trying to harken back to, the 30s or 50s, I guess, when they had the spare tire hanging out the back. But yeah, cut that off and put a little lip spoiler and call it a day.
Hey, since we're talking, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
This was at a time, the early 80s, this came out, and this was a time when, for the American manufacturers, the Japanese were really hurting them from below, the Civic and Accord in particular. The Accord was just killing the Americans. And then from above, the Germans were killing. And they were doing everything they could to fight back. And this was one thing that actually competed with the Germans. So, Stephan, your guy, David E. Davis, at the time when the LSC version of the 5-liter, 225 horsepower version came out, he said, can Lincoln compete with BMW? Can an American car actually give you a performance drive that's legitimately good? And can they do it without putting the spare tire thing on the back, on the trunk? And the answers were yes, yes, and not on your life. That's what he wrote. I still remember because it was funny. Like, it does. What are you doing with that stupid hump in the back?
Right. Well, there was a Lincoln that did have a cool hump in the back. We'll show it here. This is a 1956 Continental Mark II, which to me is really the epitome of the height of design of Lincoln. But this has got the real spare, this has got the hump on the back, but I think for the 50s, it looked appropriate back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is a cool hot rod that's for sale right now on on Bring a Trailer. And it's a resto rod. It's got a big V8, honking Coyote V8 in it. Very cool car. Lots of details. And I mean, it's got 7 days to go. We'll see what it goes for. It's at 50 grand, but it's going to go high. But Lincoln has done some cool stuff. And look at this. And Lincolns are really cool in black. Something about it.
Yeah.
Sort of sinister looking. And I don't know. I predate you guys a bit, but there was a song in the early 70s called Hot Rod Lincoln.
Yeah.
One of the best band names ever, Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen, sang a song about a hot rod Lincoln, and it was a great song. It was, I don't know, you just would have to look it up. It's hard to describe music, but there was a time that a hot rod Lincoln was an honest to goodness thing, and that Mark II really shows it off, and I think the Mark VII did a pretty decent job.
Yeah, amen. So, not anymore. All right, Stephan, what do you have for trauma surgeon safety?
Well, we're going to take a little detour this week. We're going to do something. We're going to look in the past. We've been talking about the Lincoln from the past. This great one. We've got some old cars coming up. So Steve-O sent me a video by a guy called Cars and Keys on TikTok, and he went through making fun of he's very good. He's excellent. Cars and Keys on TikTok. Take a listen to him. But he came up and had a little TikTok video showing some of these older safety ideas that just were not the greatest ideas, but they're fun to look at. And one of the ones was the HF Spats. That's the name of the inventor, automatic automobile wheel sander. So you're driving along in your car, like Steve on Sun Valley, hit some snow. You pull this crank on your car and it opens up sandbags, which dump sand in front of your tires so you can get better traction. But we're gonna take a look at some others here. And here we go. Let me get this up a little higher. So this was an alarm to keep you awake. So when you'd fall asleep, you'd hit this little mechanical buzzer and it'd buzz on your neck. Well, you can still buy these on Amazon. They're electronic now. No, they're electronic. They fit on your ears. So when your head bobs, it buzzes and wakes you back up. And then here's a great one. Driving mittens that glow in the dark to help you with hand signaling. So before they had all these blinkers, you put your mittens out and you could move it to tell people which way you're turning, left or right. And a lot of the earlier cars of the 50s had very flat windshield. They'd mount these prisms on your dash, and you can still buy these for cars that are called prisms. And it sits on your dash, and you look in the prism. It's like having a old-fashioned heads-up display. And once again, these are still available as well. Now, this one's very misogynistic. Is that correct? So we have a picture here of a policeman. He's pointing the license plate with a skull on it that says careless. And it says law violator and a number. There's a woman standing behind. So careless drivers, it was proposed, were going to get these special license plates so you could avoid these people if they're in front of you with this skull license plate.
And just looking at her picture, she's innocent.
He is innocent.
Let her go.
So here's a picture. Here's another picture. So imagine this. If you can't see the picture, here's a person laying across the road. There's a giant truck, and he's got this kind of like hail baler combiner scooping mechanism on the front that if he's lying on the road, the shield and roller will pick them up off the road and hold them up in front until the vehicle can come to a stop.
I want to know what prompted this inventor to go, man, I'm sick of seeing people asleep in the street.
That, or if a pedestrian falls in front of you, you scoop them up.
Good.
Yeah, hey, Stephan, the cruise car in San Francisco could have used this.
Yes. Oh, hey now. A little dark humor from Steve-O. As always expected. He's throwing in the special sauce today. And now here, this is the Nash car from 1956. So they came up with they were thinking of the kids here. So picture this if you can't see it. Dad's driving the left front seat, the right front seat. Mom is in the back left seat behind Dad.
Because that's the same lady with the skull on her license plate.
Yeah.
That's why she's still driving.
And the right front seat folds all the way back to basically make a bed from the back seat to the front seat. So, now, when you were kids, where did you ride in the car?
I rode sometimes on that back window, baking in the solar flare created.
Yes.
The glass.
My dad had a Pontiac Bonneville, and we would pile up pillows across the floor so you could get over the drive shaft hump. One would lay flat there, then one would lay on the seat. And then we had a Ford Econoline van. It was like 1976 that we actually took chairs out of the living room, put in the back of it. And we'd sit in there in these nice, comfy living room chairs, And you only wore a seatbelt when you sat in the rear seat in the middle because you did not want to fly from the middle rear seat all the way to the front dash. But otherwise, we didn't wear a seatbelt.
Well, that's what's interesting about that photo, or that, I don't know if it's a drawing or a photo. I guess it's a little.
It's a photo.
Page. But, nobody was thinking about restraining the kids. I mean, Dad's going, whatever highway speed, there's not a seatbelt in sight.
No, they weren't. I mean, they weren't around. Now, here's my favorite. So,
before you leave that's the kind of, you need to get rid of that car before your daughter becomes a teenager.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's what they were really advertising. And so here we go. So now we got a picture of a kid.
Wow.
So imagine you got this old car, and here's a kid in a car seat that's on the outside of the car door. So this was designed so you could flip from inside to outside, so you didn't leave your kid in the hot baking car while you're out running your errands or shopping. So I guess the idea was moms would just leave their car and go shopping while the kid's sitting outside hanging from the car door.
So you would just put him in the burger basket and just
Yeah,
walk away?
and just walk away. Yeah.
Wow. Gosh.
And then here's my last one. This is the auto strap front seat for tots. For front seat tots, $1.88. I'm going to read it here. Guards your child as you're busy driving through traffic. Lets him sit, stand, kneel, or sleep without disturbing the driver. Prevents spills from sudden stops. Heavy web harness attaches to safety strap that snaps to car seat frame. Removes easily. Also uses a walking harness from 1 to 10 years old. And this is from the Sears catalog. So imagine, listeners, if you don't have the picture, this kid's sitting up on a front seat. He's got the full, like a 4-point harness around him, and he's strapped in the car, but he can move all around the front seat. So
It's probably better than nothing, don't you think, Stephan?
yeah, absolutely better than nothing. Actually, a little 4-point belt like this, I mean, he's got 2 shoulder straps and a waistband. Actually, you strap that thing tight enough, it would be a decent restraint. Of course, it'd be a hell of a lot better than nothing. It would be way better than just a lap belt, because kids don't do well with a lap belt. So it's a little travel to the past, looking at some safety devices and features from the past that have not.
As much as we're laughing at the $1.88 auto strap, Steph, when you point that out about the 4-point harness, he's only a Hans device away from being fairly secure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is actually, it's a very good device, but but it's more about the kid not disturbing the driver.
Yeah.
Okay? But it does prevent spills from sudden stops.
The seen and not heard syndrome.
Yeah. But also can also be used as a walking harness. And I never put my kids in one of those walking harnesses, but I always admire the parents that do. I mean, because there are some kids that just take off. So
yeah, that's really great.
that's our safety segment for the day.
For that one, it's fantastic if you hit somebody, but if someone hits you from the rear, then it's not so great. And let's face it, back then you needed some peace and quiet so you can enjoy the drive and smoke your cigarette.
Exactly. That's an interesting, the sleep-in Nash, I vaguely remember hearing about Nashes like way after they were out of production, and people would talk about, oh, it was a great camping car because you could fold the whole seat out and you could sleep at a rest area in the thing. You kind of wonder, I mean, I feel like that probably was in some other automobiles and kind of made it. I believe a Saab or something, even of a relatively modern era, you could lay the front seat completely flat and it would mate with the back seat.
I've got plenty of other comments circling around my head about that, but I'm going to withhold because they may not be very politically correct in this time of Roe versus Wade. Anyway, no political comments on this show. All right, what do we got next?
Aid members.
Yes.
It's funny how that comes to mind. Anyway, it is remarkable, and I think it's worth. I do this with pollution. We hear about pollution, which of course we're always combating, but we all lived when there was real pollution, and I lived near New York City, and the pollution was unbelievable. The air pollution. We all remember when the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland caught on fire because the layer of petroleum products was at the top and it caught on fire. Now rivers are clean. Our air is, we have more to do, but way, way, way cleaner. Well, guess what? Even though there's vehicles that are not that safe, and Stephan, you've talked eloquently about that, we made a lot of progress from those days.
Oh, we made a lot of progress. Absolutely. Unfortunately, safety progress means cars are heavier, unfortunately. There's a lot of extra electronics, a lot of extra metal, but it saves lives. But, we don't need a 10,000-pound Hummer. Yeah. So
Antichrist.
The Antichrist on 4 wheels. Absolutely.
All right. Well, the next segment is going to be TV shows. And who doesn't like TV shows? Now, of course, everyone streams. And I think the TV shows are less interesting now, but the TV shows from our youth, they had some really cool cars. And we're going to have Adams go last because I think his are, I don't know, maybe the best. But let me go first.
I don't know.
Because mine are, Mine are not
Trying to
not that
think.
interesting. I love them all, but not that interesting as much. But let me go first, Stefan, then you can go, and then we'll finish with Adams.
Okay.
And you're going to see a theme in my vehicles because I grew up. My parents, especially my mom had a series of Barracudas. She had a 66, a 69, a 71 Cuda, another 70 Cuda, and then a 74 Barracuda. A lot of, yeah.
Steve, before you go, I wanted to say one thing to kind of set this up for audience members who may be of a more recent ear. Like, what do you mean cars and TV shows? Because they don't play as prominent a role on occasion. Some of them do, but I mean, back then there was an infatuation with the automobile and just the independence and the performance, and you could sort of say something about your style or your status or what you were trying to be. And that car sort of reflected that. And there were lots and lots of shows that really capitalized on that. And the car was like a character in the show.
It was a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. It may not have made every show, but it sure did. It was like a supporting actor in a way. And it was a big deal at the time.
Yeah,
The cars, there are identities associated with these cars. And the identity of the show, the message, and the cars are very important. You're right. Looking at new shows today, it's kind of like, I don't even recall many of they don't even put them in there unless it's a movie where every car is a BMW or every movie is a Mercedes, where they've just bought the rights to show off their vehicles. And that irritates me because it's
just
boring.
Just abject product positioning.
All right, Steve. So who you got here?
It's a really popular show called Succession on HBO. I'm sure we've all watched it. And there, everyone just gets in. They go from an S-Class to a helicopter to an Escalade to a Suburban. They're all generic. They don't have any personality, except they're all super nice. But yeah, that's a good point, Adams. These cars reflected the personality of the driver, of the character in the TV show. And this is a good one, like Mannix. It's a regular cop show from the late 60s. And it was not a particularly great show, but it was a good show. And
I liked it.
I did too. I watched it. Yeah.
It was a good name. I mean, Mannix is good. You have these names that are like the name, like there's no way somebody would have a name like Mannix. Like I get, it's manly and that kind of thing. It's like, oh yeah, there's a cop and his name is Frank Bullitt. Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
but Mannix
Magnum.
Yeah. Yes. So this is Mannix's car, and I always liked it because it's not a GTO. It's not like the cool muscle car. This is a budget muscle car. This is the Dodge Dart GTS, and it had a 340, which is a small block, and a 4-speed. This particular version is like British Racing Green convertible, and that was his car. And again, for a cop, you don't expect a cop to have a Cadillac back then or something fancy. I like that this was kind of a vinyl seats, kind of stripped muscle car. It wasn't the cool muscle car, so I like that.
Hey, I got one. Remember who his secretary was? Peggy Fair, played by Gail Fisher, African American actress. She was wonderful, and that was a big deal for TV in Hollywood at the time. It was a huge deal that she was on that show. I just loved her, man. She had the prettiest smile, and she was funny. And the way they interacted together, to me, that was part of that show was Peggy and Mannix interacting. I thought I liked that show. We loved that show. We watched it.
She had a sort of an intellectual spark to it. She wasn't trying to be goofy or silly. She was kind of a little bit ahead of him on scheduling and ahead of him on clues every now and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very good.
They were a team.
Right.
Next is this car did not feature prominently in the Brady Bunch, but the Brady Bunch, there you see Dad moving the wagon out of the way, but this is a kind of medium blue to light blue Plymouth Barracuda, 1971 Plymouth Barracuda convertible. And you can see Greg is driving, and it made an appearance here and there. They actually had a couple of them. This is not a Cuda. It's got hubcaps. This would probably have a 318. They even made some of these back in 1970 and 71 with a slant 6. Adams, can you believe that?
You know,
Whoa.
just looking at that car, and I watched that show. I hate it. It was one of exactly
yeah.
3 sitcoms on at the time, so we didn't have a lot of choice. You had to watch the Brady Bunch, and it looks like that might be Greg's driving lesson,
Yes.
perhaps, but it's not the one. Like Greg bought a car in one episode and was cleaning it up and trying to sell it or something like that. But that's a great pick, because I think Mr. Brady, if I have it right, was maybe an architect, so he was middle upper income, and that was a super cool car for a dad, a wage earning dad to drive around in.
Yep.
Yeah, with 6 kids, he didn't have a lot of space here, and it reminds me of there was an ad for a Porsche Boxster, and you see the Boxster, it's driving away, so you're looking at it from behind, and it just was a Boxster from behind. It had the mom and dad in the car, and the ad said, "The more kids you have, the more practical it becomes." And that's what this is like. There's not room for all those kids. Sorry, kids, you have to stay home with Alice.
Yeah. Do whatever she says. That's a
then-
great pick.
My favorite one in the same kind of vein is a 1970. This is a yellow Cuda, and this is Nash Bridges. So this is a show that was filmed early 2000s, and Don Johnson and Cheech Marin, from Cheech and Chong. So it was like a modern cop show in San Francisco, but they had this vintage car. It was this yellow 446 pack, which is a V8 in case you don't know. And it was this cool yellow vintage car with the top down. They drove around. I love that. The Nash Bridges car.
That is really cool.
That's an excellent pick. And of course, Don Johnson, that most people would know of him from Miami Vice. I'm sure he had a career before that, but that kind of like launched it. And Miami Vice was known for having all those very flamboyant exotics, Countaches, and fake Ferrari Daytonas sliding sideways through the streets of Miami. But what a great pick. I mean, this is kind of like when you know the show's producers and directors, and maybe Don Johnson, because he was in both those things. He's a common denominator. Somebody was a car guy with a good vision and understood, like Stephan had said, that's part of the personality of the show.
So this car reminds me, when I went to visited the car collection down in Florida in Boynton, and I met Brian Stiles down there, who is part of the Shelby research group, who, I mean, knew stuff about Shelby's I didn't know existed. But in their collection, there's 3 things that are very important in their collection they look for in American muscle cars. Number 1, convertible. Number 2, parchment interior. And then I didn't send those balloons up. I had no idea where this came from.
Is it your birthday? What happened?
I have no idea. And then Zoom.
I thought it was maybe number 3.
And then number 3, boom, balloons. I don't know. I have no idea. And then number 3 is the motor, and it's got to be a stick. So that's kind of like number 4. But the big 3 things: convertible, big motor, and then parchment interior. Those are the unicorns of the muscle cars that hold the most value, which is, I thought, very interesting. I had no idea.
The parchment interior seems like the odd man out there. I would never have guessed it. I don't disagree with it. I just wouldn't have guessed it.
Yep, that's why they said the parchment interiors are super rare.
Yep.
So it's just the rarest of the rare. And this car has all 3 of those.
Yep.
Cool.
This-
Good picks. I don't remember the show at all, though.
I don't either. Where were we in the 2000s? I remember hearing of it, but I never watched one episode.
I was
I
a
watched it
certain
all the time.
let's see, 2000s.
It may have been late 90s, but
Okay.
but Don Johnson and Cheech had great chemistry. And the thing was interesting. It was just a cop show, but the police department was always like it was like under renovation all the time. And they had it like in a train station for a while and all these different places. That was part of the stick, was this, like you never knew what was going on in the train station. It was always, in the police station, it was always construction. So I thought that was interesting. There were, these shows always have lots of cars. So like the General Lee in Dukes of Hazzard, they had like 20 of them. They were always crashing them. This particular show, they had 4 or 5 of these, and one of them, and Adam, you'd appreciate this. There was one that had a 340, so a small block, and a 4-speed, and that one Don Johnson saved, restored, and has it to this day.
Cool.
That's very cool.
All right, Stephan, what do you got?
All right, so let me tee mine up here. Share screen. All right. All right, so I go back even further than you
yes.
guys.
Well, that's just
So listeners, I go way my favorite TV era was basically when I was a kid, my younger days. So this is the Monkeymobile. This is designed by Dean Jeffries. It's based off a 66 GTO convertible. This monster blower on top. I mean, just over the top, giant convertible station wagon kind of. It's got pipes coming out behind the front wheels. The coolest car. When the Monkees TV show ended, Dean Jeffries was offered he could buy the car for $1,000. He passed.
Oh,
George Barris bought it, and then he later sold for 396,000. But this monkey, I love the TV show. Hey, hey, with the Monkees, man. I was just my favorite HR Puffin stuff. But this car was big to me. And then the typical boy. Well, what's the next car a boy's going to pick?
well,
Okay.
but
before you leave that,
Go back.
the Monkees that particular show was quite good, and you know, you wonder if our listeners, watchers even remember it, but it was it was about a band that was actually a decent band that recorded things, and then they had sort of a silly sitcom, played off each other. But that car was not in enough of those episodes. You'd see it every
No.
now and then, and just the ridiculous exhaust pipes popping out the side, a la Mercedes-Benz, McLaren SLR. You know,
Yes.
about 40 years later. But what a crazy craft that is.
they
Is.
they basically created the band for the TV show.
Yeah.
But they were musicians. But this is funny. They were stung by the criticism. They called them the Prefab Four instead of the Fab Four.
That's a funny name.
It's hilarious.
little-
By the way, I think only one is still alive.
Yeah, that's probably true. So number 2. So I'm going backwards. So
Yes.
my number 1 bit. So my second car is, of course, the Batmobile,
Yeah.
based on a 1955 Ford Futura. This was a George Barris design.
Yep.
Remember Batman, kapow, crash, bang.
Yeah.
This car sold in 2013 for $4.6 million. 2 guys, I don't remember their names, got into, they wanted it badly, and $4.6 million for the original Batmobile. So I just, Batman, I love Batman. Just love that show.
That particular model, you know, I wouldn't say that I have followed every Batman iteration, but there was one in the 2000s, maybe mid 2000s, that was some Batmobile that had this ridiculous big wave of a wing on the back. This car,
Yeah.
even though, it's incredibly overstyled. However, you think that could be a car, like if you had unlimited dough and you were out solving crimes and you were sort of halfway had superpowers, that would be a car that you could go, okay, I get it. You know, that's like a car they would drive. The later ones were terrible versions of this that were not even close to as believable as that car. That car set the whole tone of them to me.
So that's my number 2. All right, number 1, of course, Steve-O could have probably guessed this.
Oh yeah.
The Mach 5 Speed Racer, man. I just of all the TV shows and the cartoons, Speed Racer was just completely it for me. And then for the movie, they actually built the real one. So you got to remember the car, the Mach 5 was, he was a racer. It was the Open Formula Racing Series. The original Mach 5 in the cartoon had 5,000 horsepower. It could do 300 miles an hour. It had 7 very race-specific mechanisms. This is why I love this car. And it had letters on the buttons of the steering wheel. It had auto jack, which would boom, thrust the car off the ground. It could leap over the competition. It had belt tires, so special clamps would come out on grips so it could catch in, get better traction. And then you can see the picture here. You can see the blades out front, cutter blades that projected out the front.
Like a
And then
battle bot.
Like a battle bot. Yeah. Then it had a deflector that sealed the cockpit that had bulletproof capabilities. And then it had evening eye, which was a special yellow illumination so he could see at night. Frogger mode. It could let the Mach 5 dive, go underwater. And then it had the go homing robot. Just like, today, all these little what are the things you fly? I'm having a senior moment here. Drones, a go homing robot. So the robot bird could carry things from the car back to the garage. So I just love this car, man. It's it, you know. I've got speed racer cars up here. Look, I'm looking at them right now on my little collection. So that was it for me, the number one car.
You know, it's funny. Some of that is kind of cartoon tech of the era. And of course, coming out of Japan, it's almost no surprise. But a little bit of that hinted at the future.
Yes.
Some of the things you mentioned are like either sort of being done or not terribly far off. And I'm even looking at the 5-cylinder, what they call phone dial wheels. I mean, Lamborghini was 15 years after that just to pick up the design of the wheels. But some of the technological stuff is not nearly as far-fetched now as it was then.
You know, when you think about when this show came out and they're designing a future race car, that thing is sporty, man.
Yeah.
It is totally realistic. I mean, you could see somebody racing something like that. So that's my number one pick.
Good one.
I think it's an awesome pick. And yeah, don't forget the Porsche 928 with those wheels. But yeah, absolutely a great pick. That was such a great show. Speed racer running around and just, it was so awesome.
I love it. All right, Adams, you're up. Here we go.
Here we go.
Love this.
Get Smart. That one, the 1965 Sunbeam Tiger. Steph, I was just positive you were going to pick that, and I was going to.
I had it on my list, but I had to pare my list down to 3, and it was on there. As number 4.
I'm not surprised. But
that was actually number 5. That was number 5 on my list.
This dude was Don Adams was the actor. He played Maxwell Smart in a show called Get Smart. Get it? Get Smart. And he was sort of a bumbling secret agent, and he was sort of a spoof really on like the James Bond and the other spy, you know, the very, you know, smooth and svelte sort of guys who were secret agents and always got the lady. He was the bumbling version of that. He was like Austin Powers, would have been many years later.
Yep.
But he drove a Sunbeam Tiger that he skidded up to a stop at the start of every single episode. That was the beginning. And he would jump out of his red convertible and go inside the headquarters, not very secret of him. But that particular car was in there. And, you know, if that ever showed up in an episode, I was just glued to it. I mean, the show was not very funny, but it did have, if you go to the next photo.
But I was in love with Agent 99.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Me too.
Oh man, I was so in love with her. That was his sidekick. Barbara Feldon. Man, I liked the show, but I was about that age where, I know this show was earlier, but I liked her, man. She was something else.
And she's another one where she was not the foil character trying to be goofy. She was way smarter than
him. Yep.
Right.
It was amazing to me. It did not have wire wheels.
Yeah.
I thought all the Tigers had wire wheels. I guess not.
No, they were shredding the splines off of them like a lot of cars that had that much torque. Although it did have ridiculous looking chrome hubcaps. I mean, that's why you see the 4-spoke American Racing Libras on a lot of them in Minolites. But here it is in the museum with the big old huge telephone shoe.
I was going to say the picture. So he had a shoe telephone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he was forever barely getting missed by a bullet or a bomb, and he'd go, "It missed me this much."
Right. Hey, before you move on, talk a little bit about the Sunbeam Tiger, because there was a Sunbeam Alpine, and then the Tiger was a different thing. I was going to say different animal, but you can't say that about a Tiger.
That was a good one, though, but that's true. The Alpine was a little MG competitor, would have been a 1,725cc inline 4, probably a whole 95 horsepower, never did anything wrong to anybody. Ian Gerard and Lord Roots of Roots, who made Sunbeam, got together with Carroll Shelby, and probably over a couple of drinks decided they would try to shoehorn a 260 V8 in it. And Stephan knows the rest of this story. Shelby and his guys, in about 3 days, plugged the V8 into the front. And they had to move the master cylinder around, and they had to do all kind of things to cooling. But they came up with the prototype that Lord Roots, at probably 75 or something years old, he's the head of the company chairman, he drove it and said, "We're building it." He drove it about 2 miles and said, "We're building this." So that's the Sunbeam Tiger story. I don't remember how many they made, but they're super cool. They're like people call them a poor man's Cobra, but it's a neat V8 engine, little small car.
Right. They went with the AC chassis because it handled much better for racing. It was just a better driving the chassis. That's why they went with the AC.
Yeah,
Instead
these
of-
cars had terrible problems with brakes and overheating.
Right.
Yeah, but you can make them right. You can make them right. What do
All
we
right,
got?
what you got next? Here we go.
Oh, well, this was interesting. There was a dealership in Appleton, Wisconsin, called Smart Motors, and they were a Sunbeam dealer. Well, just based on the popularity of the show, they sold more Tigers than people anywhere other than big cities like Chicago and LA.
Wow.
And it's a little bitty town, just because the popularity of the show was super cool. All right, next is one I kind of didn't want to pick, but I had to.
Got to.
Yeah, I have to agree.
I had to. I mean, I
Yes.
didn't want to, but there it is. Tom Selleck is Magnum PI, another one of those funny names, who really made Ferrari almost a household word. I mean, when it came out, it was a super popular show. And Steve and I were talking earlier that that him and that car in Hawaii working for this super wealthy, mysterious man sort of caught the go-go 80s and the sort of opulent, showy 80s at the perfect moment, right at the wave. And Ferrari basically became kind of instantly popular and very well known, and all the models and the posters and everything else. Everybody knew this car. When I had a Dino 246, and about that time, nobody knew what it was. I ended up getting a red, my first 308. Everybody knew what that was.
What's funny about the show was you never saw Magnum without the top on it. It had this removable hardtop because he couldn't fit in it with the top on it. And then you'd watch him driving. You'd actually kind of like Steve-O and my Cobra that I had. His head was above the top of the windshield.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And they actually cut the seat frame off of that, and they would drop the floor because he's 6'4". And they try to drop the floor to get him down a little bit. But yeah, on some of the shows, it's kind of comical because his head's above the windshield frame. And then I think I got a couple other pictures of that. I've got that's just your typical scene, him all Mr. Handsome, coming up to it. And this was at the start of every single show.
Yep.
And you guys probably remember it. A guy's peeling out of the grass and he catches it. It is perfect driving, and then he aligns onto this little 2-lane highway in Hawaii, and it's a good scene. Okay, and next
I love that pick. I love it.
My favorite, Jim Rockford, played by James Garner, who is a real car guy, a real racer, car driver, like right alongside Steve McQueen and some of the other folks from Hollywood who were trying their hand at it. He was more than a dabbler. But he played in Rockford Files. Oh, I don't remember when that show came out, but it maybe 74 to 1979 or maybe 80. And he drove a gold Firebird. And I learned this today looking this up because it's such a great topic, Steve, that they wanted to present him as driving something sort of elegant, sort of performance, but a bit on a budget. And the budget part came because he didn't really make a lot of money as a private eye. Unlike, Magnum PI living this sort of luxurious lifestyle, Jim Rockford lived in a trailer in a parking lot near the ocean in Malibu. And he was a do-gooder PI. He took on cases nobody would take. Mostly they didn't hardly pay him. So he has this lower priced Firebird Esprit. Well, what the producers did is they really would buy a Firebird Formula 400, but they would remove the hood, put a basic hood on it, remove the tail spoiler, put a basic one on it, give it white wall tires, even though it still had stiffer suspension, a little bit better brakes, a little bit better motor. But I loved that. Do you guys remember that show?
I do. I remember the show. Yes. It was a good one.
It was my favorite show at the time. I never missed it. And I was going to put that down because this is my favorite, but I knew someone else was going to pick it. I'm like, let someone else have it. I still remember This is
Well, that color
70
also was not even, Steph, I think there's another photo or two of it.
don't show
Yeah,
yet.
That
This
was
is
not
the
even a Pontiac color. They painted them specifically for that. I'm sure there's a story there, and you can see he's got the rally wheels on it, so it's looked a little bit more sporty. But they were all that color, and this is what I thought was cool. By the time the show ended, 1980, Pontiac had dramatically restyled the front end of that car. And James Garner, not the directors, not the producers, James Garner said, nope, we are not changing the iconic look of the car I started off in.
They
So
did
he
change it.
Say that again?
They did. Go back one, go up one. So this is, I think, 75. And you see the parking lights in the grill?
Yep. Yep.
74, they didn't have that. So I was watching the show. I watched it a whole season. It didn't have those parking lights. And then next year it did. I'm like, they changed it. And I wonder, wonder if anyone else noticed. Obviously, you guys didn't notice, but they changed it a little bit. But you're right. When they got to 1980, they didn't have in
in the 80s, I was noticing women more than cars, maybe.
1977, they went to rectangular headlights, and he never did that.
And I guess that's what I'm referring to. And they split them apart. You know, there was like space between the headlights. You know, there were 4 front lights. That was the thing. He said, no, I'm not going to that. So I guess he tried to stay with that style. Yeah, Stephan was experimenting with the fold down seats in the Nash at the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, and this is a car, and I had forgotten he did this, but almost every episode he did a J turn.
J-turn.
You know, yeah. And Stephen described that because I think that's kind of fun.
He did it all the time. So you go full speed in reverse, and all of a sudden you hit the brakes and turn the wheel, and the front slides around because you're going backwards. So the heavier front with the engine comes around, you release the brakes, and you hit the gas. So you do a very quick 180, although you start it in reverse and you shift to going forward. And he did that all the time.
He got away from so many bad guys doing that. It's just not funny.
All right, we got time for bad.
We got a bad. I got a bad. The worst, right
No.
there.
I've got one that's worse than that.
What are we
tell us what we're looking at.
Well, this is a Starsky and Hutch, and you gotta love that green plaid sport coat. I don't even know who's Starsky and who's Hutch, and I don't care. Never wanted to know. But this is a 1976 Ford Torino, perhaps the ugliest that they ever made. I mean, there were some pretty decent looking Torinos. This is not it. And it's basically a masking tape special. I could have done that over a 6-pack with you guys in an hour, where they just painted this thing. I think they called it a vector stripe or something kind of fancy. On top of this poor Torino, they put air shocks on it to raise the back so it looks even worse. I believe it's sitting on 14-inch wheels, and gave it some dumb looking Krager mags or something. And that car made me root for the criminals.
This one made me root for the criminals.
Go back. This was a mid 70s show, early 70s show. They wore like the polyester clothes and stuff like that. And you can see there, they had the long hair. This was so 70s. It's the perfect car for an early 70s.
I didn't like the car.
Had crappy performance, but I thought it was a perfect car. By the way, if you're undercover cops, probably perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, here is the one I hated.
Yeah.
This is from Knight Rider, the car named Kit that talked, that was computerized. I just hated everything about it. It was just stupid. It just was stupid. They tried to be cool and computerized and futuristic, and to me, it failed in every way possible.
Steph, if I thought of that, I'd have put it on my most hated list too. Everything about it, from David Hasselhoff trying to come back from Baywatch or Babe Watch, as it really was, and it was more like Pamela Anderson's career than his, in this awful car. And it spoke to him. It had digital everything, and it was bad.
I hated this. I hated the car also, and the stupid computer graphics that they would show on TV, and then I had like the red light in the front. that would like light up. I hate this show. I completely agree with you, but I disagree with you with any aspersions being cast on Baywatch.
Oh, we lost him.
Steve, you got to say it again, because we got to get that anger out.
Yeah, the anger.
No, you're not. We can't hear you. Hopefully it's going online. Oh, well, listeners, Steve-O is out. He's in Sun Valley, and the snow must be coming down hard because we can't hear him anymore. Maybe it made it to the web. Anyway.
Yeah, the hydraulically powered internet out there is freezing up.
The mice on the wheel have stopped running. But hey, thanks for listening. This was a blast talking about these. There's a couple one. Look up the Munsters TV show car. That thing is ridiculous. You got to look that one up.
The Munster Coach.
The Munster Coach, man, made out of 3 Ford Model Ts. That was a good one too. All right, well, thanks for watching, and if you're listening, thanks for listening. Remember to like, listen, subscribe, hit the up button, save button, like us button, subscribe, whatever, and we'll see you next week. And Steve-O will hopefully return back from his silence here in his frozen world.
Tone of silence. I like Get Smart.
All right.